All right, we are live on YouTube now. Thank you, Jeremy. Rick, I am promoting you to panelist. We have a good crowd. Dang. All right, who are we waiting for? Waiting for our share. There's Mark. Good to see you, Mark. Has anyone heard from Mayor Tecklenburg? There he is. Okay. Perfect. Great. Welcome, everyone.
Everybody.
Morning, Mayor Tecklenburg. How are you?
How's everybody doing?
Really good.
It's good to see everyone. And I was said to welcome new members. I think the only new member is to welcome an old member back. And that's Councilmember Seekings. Good to see you.
Happy to be back. Thank you.
Sure.
Staging my comeback here.
Glad to have you back.
Thanks.
Are we good to go, Katie?
We are.
All right. Thank you for everybody joining us. I think we decided we get together every other time virtually. Is that right?
That's what we were trying this year, a hybrid.
We're maximizing our efficiency. Absolutely. So thank you for being with us this morning. Ask you to just join me for a moment of silence as we continue to reflect on and pray for those who are suffering in the country of Ukraine. Think of them particularly. A moment of silence. Thank you. Amen. I tell you, you see those pictures of Mariupol, that city that's just been wiped out. And if this doesn't, remind you of those scenes from cities in World War II that the same kind of thing happened to, it's just, it's horrific. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, on with our business. We got a couple of reports from Katie, one on our compost program, and then we might recommend to council trying to fund a little bit of money to keep it going, and talk again about our plastic bag ordinance. So if I may just turn those two items on over to Katie, and appreciate the update.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Mayor Tecklenburg. Can everyone see my screen? Yes. Thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, I wanted to really quickly, if it's okay, we are off the agenda a little bit, but I wanted to mention that we had a lot of success at our electric lawn care expo on April 30th. We have all the information and some pictures on our website. There's Chip from our stormwater department. We also have Mark from Recreation, Councilmember Seekings came, lots of great information was shared. We had over 40 residents purchase new electric equipment, and many of them bought more than one. So you can see on this webpage, we have got all kinds of benefits and resources for any residents or businesses looking to transition to electric. We were also very fortunate that Lowe's and Ego donated 2 electric blowers for our city staff to test and demo and start using. So our departments are using those right now and testing them out. So I just wanted to mention that before I jumped right into composting. All right. There are no questions on that. So as you all know, we started a pilot composting program in January, and it's an action that directly implements our climate action plan. And it's of course important because when we send organic materials to the landfill and they don't break down with oxygen, they release methane, which is much more potent than carbon dioxide at trapping heat in our atmosphere. And since organics are the largest part of our waste stream, it's really important that this is in our climate action plan, and that's why we're implementing it. And it helps us achieve 3 different goals in our climate action plan. So the program is a drop site program. We have 3 sites that we're testing. It's a pilot project. We were able to get the grant extended through December 31st, 2022. So that will line up with our budget cycle perfectly. However, our funding will end on December 31st. So we did some data and analysis to try to figure out how we could continue this program because it has had a lot of success. Here's an example of a food scrap drop-off site at Ackermann Park. You can see the permanent signage we recently installed there, and we have some new lids and locking features that don't have chains anymore. So we've been upgrading as we go during the test based on feedback we've heard from participants. We've done a lot of education and outreach for the program. So we did 2 workshops. They were actually identical, and it's really interesting. You can see the difference in the amount of people we reached virtually versus an in-person event in March. There's of course advantages to doing it in person versus virtual, but I love this hybrid approach. So appreciate Mayor Tecklenburg mentioning that. We've also been promoting our program weekly at the West Ashley Farmers Market, and we purposely put one of the drop sites at Ackermann Park so we could do that. We've reached over 300 people in the 5 weeks so far. We've had lots of great volunteers. You can see Stuart and Megan from McGill there with us, logging over 40 hours a week, and it's been really fun just talking and engaging with residents and getting feedback from them that way too. Thanks to Betsy and the Coastal Conservation League. She helped us make sure we proclaimed May 1st through 7th as International Compost Awareness Week, so brought a lot more attention to composting that way. She also helped promote it at a Charleston Green Drinks event, which was focused on composting. We also have a climate ambassador program that's reached over 1,000 people. And part of that presentation is to talk about our new compost program. So you can see here, Ambassador Danielle is actually from our East Side neighborhood, and she's presenting to a bunch of high school students in this picture. And of course, we have lots of efforts going on social media. We started an Instagram page recently. I'm pretty proud that we're up to 134 posts for not having any dedicated staff for communication and outreach. But you can see we have a lot of posts on our social media. Hopefully you've been following us, and we have been fortunate to receive a lot of shares from partner organizations. So thanks everyone for your support there. And then an exciting outreach opportunity recently happened was completing the loop. So that compost loop is, once we create this product, how does it go back into our soils and nourish our soils? So I'm excited to announce we were able to recently complete that loop. And with the help of McGill Compost and the Charleston Parks Conservancy, we were able to get some of that compost back into our city parks and gardens. And you can see here a picture of a flower bed at Medway Park Community Garden, where Charleston Parks Conservancy is actually going to test the difference between the mushroom compost and the bees best compost, and it's pretty neat to see that that's going back into our community. So how about some data? So let's jump right in. So we have over 800 households participating at the 3 drop sites. Yes, thank you, Stuart, for the claps. We have the majority are at Ackermann Park, which is in West Ashley, which makes sense. It's surrounded by the most neighborhoods in the most populated area, followed by Corinne Jones Park on the peninsula, and then Medway Park on James Island, which also touches some Johns Island folks that traverse by it daily. And just some testimonials and images from participants in action. People really enjoy this program. I've received lots of feedback about how it cuts down on garbage, taking out the garbage less, the garbage not smelling anymore, things like that is exciting. I visit the park regularly anyway, so why not bring along my food scraps? It's easy to do. My kids love composting, and these children particularly loved opening the lock. That is, they are the compost czars in the house and make sure everything gets into the food scrap bin to be composted, which is really neat to see. We live in an apartment, so we don't have a yard to compost at home. So we drop our food scraps off and then head straight to the dog park. It's really convenient for us. And I love this one. This was yesterday at the farmer's market, showing the empowerment of the next generation and this young child composting a banana peel that she ate directly at the market, which is really neat. So we set a goal. We're very data driven in the city of Charleston, especially for our sustainability efforts. So we set a goal to reach 500 people, which we did. We made it to 800, and to divert 20 tons of food scraps in our pilot period of 6 months. So that requires about 3.5 tons a month. And you can see we are exceeding that already. We are on track to exceed this 20-ton goal in our pilot period. So that's pretty exciting. So we started looking at costs for the program, and the monthly cost for this is less than $1 per household. So that's pretty exciting. Now, when you compare that with, there's an amazing compost hauler that picks up curbside at residents' homes, which runs $40 a month. So that's a pretty big difference there when we're getting to $1 a month versus $40 a month. So we said, well, how does this compare to our curbside garbage costs? So we got some data from our environmental services division that points out we pay about $6.40 per household per month for curbside garbage service. And now, of course, we all know in that curbside garbage service, we're collecting food waste, whether we like it or not. About 25% of that garbage collected is food scraps. So now, while this isn't a perfect apples to apples comparison, we're just taking that 25% chunk and saying that's about $1.60 per household per month that is dedicated to collecting food scraps. And when you compare that with the cost of our drop site program, it makes sense that it would be less, because the drop site program is about aggregating material into less locations rather than picking it up at each individual address. So it would make sense that it would be a more affordable option. So I love this graph because I think it shows the real potential for how we could see our garbage costs reducing, our expenses reducing over time as more people participate in the compost program. Think of less trips, less trucks full, less routes, potentially less trucks, less staff. That's, of course, much further in the future. We'd need to ramp up the program a lot to get to that scale of impact, but the potential is there. So I like to think of the compost program really as an investment to reduce our garbage expenses. Now, let's see how that actually directly impacts our emissions goals. So in 2018, you can see on the left, that is our emissions from food scraps in the entire city without any composting programs. Now, 2022, the next bar shows our pilot project. So that's with just the 3 sites, we're hitting about 1% of households right now. So you can see there's about 100 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent being reduced just by the pilot program right now, which doesn't seem like a lot in the grand scheme of things. But remember, every little bit counts, every little bit adds up. These emissions are from food scraps citywide. So there's part of this that's residential, there's part of this commercial, restaurants, businesses are all included in this. And unfortunately, we don't track waste data in a way that we can separate out those sectors. But if you look at the third bar, you can see this is what we are proposing for 2023 would be expanding the compost program to 6 sites, doubling the sites, and reaching about 5% of households. And we can do that with the help of our partners, specifically Charleston County, who is also applied for the same grant we did and is trying to create drop sites at their convenience centers. And we will know if those grants were approved next month. So that's pretty exciting. So that would truly make it a regional program. The county would have locations, the city would have locations, hopefully Mount Pleasant and North Charleston will add locations, and then we would each monitor and pay for our own specific locations. So you can see the impact over time. If we can get down to 15% of households composting, how we're really starting to make a dent in those emissions and how those really add up. You can see that red line is our 2030 goal. So that's where we need to get to. So, Dale always says large ships turn slowly. So this is a process that will take time to gather more attention and to grow our program. So the cost to get this up to a 6-site program, and that is with grant funding to pay for all the signage and et cetera. So this cost would just be for the hauling, would be about $20,000. So that's the investment that we are hoping to request in the budget this year to expand the program, to continue and expand the program. So I thought I would mention all that data and then go back to the committee. I'd love to hear any discussion you have, any questions, any thoughts that you think we can improve the program at this time. So thank you.
Kendra, did I see your hand up? Oh, no. Okay.
No, sorry. Great. I think that's great, though. And I've heard great things about the program from people participating and have been talking about it as well. So congratulations on the success. And it does seem like a really high return on our investment.
Stuart, I saw your picture in there. Thanks for volunteering as always.
You're welcome. I think the most impressive experience that I've had is hearing from the people who have come by who said, "Oh, I didn't know we could do this in our homes. I always thought that composting, we needed something in the backyard." And so it's an eye opener and it's an education for individuals who realize now they could do something with their food waste and they don't need to compost in their backyard. They could bring them to one of the sites. So, and how appreciative so many people were or are of having that availability for them.
That's great. So, oh yeah, Christine.
I just wanted to also point out that there are a lot of people who are composting in their backyards, and that also is saving money, and that's not factored in here. So, you might be getting to your goals quicker than you think you are because of that.
That's a great point. And we are actually encouraging people to compost in their backyards first, because like you said, it's even better. There's no transportation. They're reusing that soil right in their yards, and they get to keep all the compost for themselves. So that is our first push. We ask folks, do you have a yard? Are you interested in trying it? And we give them guides to help them DIY it at home. Right. There's a lot of folks that will also participate in both because our program is commercial. So we can accept meats and bones and shells and cheese and things like that you wouldn't usually put in a backyard pile.
So a little report and a question, might be an oddball question, but I saw the slide there of the community garden and how we're putting the compost to use. We are finalizing an amendment to our lease with Charleston Water Service that's going to allow us to create a new community garden on the Greenway property. So that'll be nice.
Great.
And then just in the process of talking with them, Ken Hill at CWS put us in touch with the leadership out at Clemson Extension. So further out the Greenway, we hope to partner with Clemson to do some more community gardens out there. So create some more places for us to use compost. For some reason, this question popped in my head while you were making the presentation, and I almost hesitate because I bet this is not something that we necessarily want to promote. We prefer folks to either compost in their backyard or be part of this program. I'm just thinking out loud. Has anybody ever looked at the efficiency or benefit of, if you're not composting, of putting your food scraps in the garbage disposal? A lot of people have them, some people don't, versus putting it in the waste stream in and up in the landfill. I know when you put it in the grinder, you got to use some water, you got to put it through the sewage system and all like that. So I'm just curious, does anybody ever compare the two outcomes? Do you know? Christine has her hand up.
Well, I think it's not recommended because when you grind up that food waste and it goes into the water system or the wastewater system, and then it ends up at the wastewater treatment plant. So they
Right.
have, number one, they have to deal with it. And number two, it adds a lot of nutrients to the water, which take a lot of oxygen to break down.
Yeah.
And then, fish and other animals are competing for that oxygen.
Right.
So it's not recommended to do that on a large scale.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Anyway, the question occurred to me, so just take that off the record. We're not going to promote that at all. I just question occurred to me. All right, so I don't know about y'all, but it seems to me like you said it was $10,000 or $20,000 you'd be requesting next year.
It would be 10 to continue the 3 sites. It would be 20 to double it, add 3 more sites.
I see. It seems like a reasonable request to me based on what looks like a good cost benefit. Anybody object? Do y'all want to recommend to City Council that we support that next year, a $20,000 commitment for this? Anybody object? What do you think, council members on the committee?
What would be the 3 sites that would be added? Do we know yet?
We don't know, but our ideal, we would want to make sure we try to get one in every borough. So for example, right now, it's hard to promote the program to anyone on Daniel Island because there's not a drop site there. So we want to make sure, we want to try to reach everyone when we expand it, which is why the 6 sites is really important.
I think expanding it is a good idea. I don't think 20,000 is an unreasonable request. I would just say if this committee votes to put it forward, you get it in front of the budget committee so it gets in there early and we're not fighting for the dollars in December.
Right. And speaking of such things, did we lose the mattress recycling program on a budget item? Yeah.
It did not make it through the budget.
And that request came through environmental services, right?
Yes.
That was 10 or 15,000 as well.
Yes.
It wasn't a huge number. I thought that program was good. We were saving quite a few box loads of mattresses from going to the landfill by doing that. Apparently the cost of the program was just that the recycler is up in Florence or somewhere up in the PD, and there was transportation to take the containers up to him when we'd collect them. But personally, I'd like to see us get that going again next year as well, unless somebody has an objection. The more we can keep from going to landfills, the better, right? Yeah. Amen.
Correct. Okay, I will talk with Matt about adding that, making sure that's in the budget. I know he was very supportive of that program.
Right. Terrific. All right. Anything else on composting? If not, we'll go to plastic bags.
All right. Okay, so I wanted to first mention that since I've been at the farmers market every week, I've noticed we have these signs. We have 3 signs that we purchased with grant funds a couple of years ago, and Harrison, our farmers market manager, has been putting these out every week at both of our markets. And I've noticed a huge uptick in reusable bag usage there. So, I would say over half, probably closer to 80% of users of shoppers at least the West Ashley market are bringing their own reusable bags. And it's really neat to see. There was a noticeable difference from week 1 when people were starting to get back in the swing of things. And then week 2, I think the signs really helped. And now people really feel like it's important. So I wanted to share that our outreach and education on the reusable bags has been successful at the farmers markets. Now we have, there's one challenge we have with our ordinance is fairly straightforward to address. We haven't wanted to address it because of COVID concerns, but basically we have some organizations that are producing these plastic bags that are extra thick that meet the 4 mil requirement instead of paper bags. If you can imagine, this is not a problem specific to Charleston. This is a problem that the entire world has faced. So there are already solutions out there. So we reached out to some of the municipalities that have faced this challenge and asked them, how did you change your ordinance? What worked, what didn't? And this example amendment, which you can see, this is our definition of reusable carryout bag right now. And the area in bold and underlined is what we're proposing to change. And that's just based on what Barrington, Rhode Island, and all of Rhode Island and Massachusetts has changed their ordinance to, and it has worked for them. So that's why we are proposing this verbiage change to address the extra thick reusable bags, and we think this will work. I will also mention that this is also an easy opportunity for us to consider the cutlery, the extra cutlery we get. So think of if you order DoorDash, it comes straight to your door and it comes in a bag with all kinds of extra things that you don't need in your home because you already have silverware in your home. When you go through a drive-through, a lot of times you're taking that home with you. So this just adds that step where a customer has to actually say, yes, I need the silverware, and then they can receive it. Now, in this example, cutlery is still exempt. We are not proposing to change that exemption. We're just saying it needs to be given by request. That's what that means. So I'll put it back, Mayor Tecklenburg, who's our chairman, for any committee discussion. If you would like to make a recommendation that this amendment go to city council, you may do that, or whatever you suggest.
Any questions or discussion on this? Councilmember Shealy.
Yeah, Katie, thank you. With these thicker bags that you're talking about, I know part of what we were talking about when we were eliminating these bags was that they couldn't go through the recycle machines. They were too thin and couldn't be recycled. With those thicker bags, do we still have the same situation? Is that the problem? They also cannot be recycled?
They can't be recycled. Charleston County doesn't accept them. They clog up the machines. You're right. It's how they affect the machines.
So I guess my question is there a certain thickness? When can it go through? I mean, is there a certain thickness to a plastic bag or whatever? I mean, certainly they recycle plastic bottles, so there's a certain thickness there that can go through these machines. Is there a thickness that we could go to that we can say, okay, yep, that bag can be recycled and we'll be okay?
So it's my understanding that the recycling facility, like certain things will fall through, like you're saying, those are really small things like straws and bottle caps and things like that. So those little tiny things can't be recycled. Even if you had a little tiny piece of paper, that would fall out of the machine, even though paper is recyclable. So that's the small item. Bags are just jamming the machines up. So I don't believe that any amount of thickness would change that. They are just affecting how the machines function and jamming them.
Yeah,
What does the stitching accomplish? Is it the reusability of the handle?
It's every reusable bag that you would think of as a reusable bag has stitching on the handle versus this bag does not. It's heat fused. So that's just finding the difference between the two types of bags.
Okay.
Even a bag like this that comes in a little bag has stitching around the handle.
I see.
And I wanted to go back to that plastic question from Council Member Shealy. The plastic one thing that I do when I educate people on plastic recycling is I try to tell them that rigid items are generally recyclable, and anything that's a soft plastic is generally not recyclable. And it really does have everything to do with the recycling system at the material recovery facility. You simply can't, like, hoses are murder to that system. They really will jam it up. Plastic bags, any kind of tubing, any kind of soft plastic that you can think of just gets wrapped around all those gears and processes, and it shuts the plant down for hours. And then you have staff that has to go in there and physically remove all of this, and that's dangerous and time consuming. So we do not want any of these materials in the recycling material recovery facility.
So I just want to make sure I'm straight. The issue isn't about bags going to be recycled. It's about them being reused. We don't want any bags going to the recycler, because from what I'm hearing, it doesn't matter whether they have a thermo handle or a stitched handle. Sending a bag through the machine is not a good thing. Is that right? So
A shirt would do the same thing.
This is more about just the integrity of the reusable bag so that you can reuse it more often because it has a stitched handle.
Well, there also be a tendency to reuse it. What we're finding is that places, I'll use liquor stores as an example, who, when we had the single-use ban, they went to a thicker one, and most people bring them home. They don't reuse those plastic bags. They put them in the garbage, and that's causing that issue. So by actually putting that clause in about stitching, people are going to tend to reuse those more than they would even think of using those thicker plastic bags.
I got you. All right. Councilmember Bowden?
So the municipalities or states that have made this change, did they go through any process of trying to educate businesses and people in the community about the change before it was implemented?
Katie, do you have a response to that? Do you know?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it?
Education before putting in place, and I guess a follow-up already, have we talked to Mount Pleasant and the other jurisdictions that have plastic bans to see if we can all kind of do this together?
Yes, I have been in touch with them. I've let them know that we are looking at changing it, and if we changed it, I would just send that all to them, and they're interested in adopting it too, so it would all be similar.
Right. And most cities, they would, again, like we did originally, have some kind of lead time or 6 months or something to let people make a changeover and try to educate them.
Yes, that is part of the code that I didn't put on a slide, but the ordinance we're proposing it takes effect in 6 months. So it gives time to adjust and use existing supply. And of course, there's always the request for exemption is also a possibility if there's extra supply there.
All right. Any other questions or comments? And what about the cutlery? Dale?
Yeah, just simply, let's just make sure it's obvious. We would do a communications campaign with the information office of the city and work with the newspapers and the media to make sure that they also help amplify that, hey, this has been amended. Our approach is going to change on a date certain in 2023, and keep it up so that this doesn't take people by surprise. That would be on us, but we would want to make sure that the citizenry is prepared.
Mm-hmm. And what about the cutlery question? Anybody got a comment or question about that? In other words, you would have to request the cutlery rather than just everybody automatically putting it in there, and then you get home and you use your own silverware and you throw the other, or you have a whole drawer full of cutlery that you at some point will throw away.
Hey, this is Christine. I wanted to say that I think this is another good step in the right direction, but I really feel like we ought to, at some point, think about going to all compostable cutlery, because the majority of people, if you give them a box that's compostable and cutlery that's plastic, that plastic is going to end up in that compostable box, and it could end up in the compost system. So that plastic cutlery is a contaminant, and it will remain a contaminant until we change and make it a requirement to have all compostable cutlery.
There you go. Rick? You're on mute. Rick, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Thank you for the opportunity, sir. Thank you. I just want to ask a question about the cutlery thing. I think there are a lot of workers that actually go get their lunch and take out lunch, and they're going to need cutlery to probably eat it and not take it home. This will probably require, in my opinion, and I could be completely wrong here, some proactive means by the restaurant providing the note that there's no cutlery in your bag, because when you come in, you pick up your bag and you leave. And then if you get to your location where you're going to eat on a park bench or wherever it might be, a work site, and you open it up and there's no cutlery in there, then you get a problem. You can't eat your food. So I just think the notion here about providing it in terms of presenting that cutlery in front of them in a counter or something might be the way to go, because then they can get it. It's more in their face. So this might be a little counter to the purpose of this this item here, but I'm just thinking about the fact that there are a lot of people that do take out food that eat it off, not at home. So.
Well, going back to Christine's point, Katie, did we look at the comparison before about the plastic versus the compostable cutlery?
Yes, and so right now, the way our ordinance is written is everything has to either be compostable or recyclable, meaning it's accepted at Charleston County Recycling. So if we were to change just the silverware, we'd be missing a huge opportunity. It would be a chance to change. Eventually, this ordinance needs to become all compostable, but I don't necessarily feel like we are there yet. But that is why we started with just recyclable and compostable materials. But yes, there are, if you go to California, the requirements are just compostable. You go to Hawaii, it's just compostable. It's just cloth bags, no plastic at all.
But if that's our ultimate goal, and how far away are we from that? Does it make sense just to wait on the cutlery till we can go compostable? But I guess it depends on timing.
Well, that would be a pretty big change. I'd recommend a whole bunch of education before we made a change like that versus these items here. I think are fairly straightforward, that we could potentially do a lot faster. But I think there's always challenges with any program, and education's a huge component of it. So.
Right. But Rick makes a good point. I mean, if you got a lunch spot and they're serving a lot of blue collar workers and they're just picking up lunch, I mean, they're going to want cutlery. They're not taking it home. They get ready to eat, and then they get mad at the store for not providing it. And I mean, I can just see all kinds of little repercussions. I get it if you like calling a restaurant and picking it up to take home in the evening, maybe. I don't know. It could get complicated. What do y'all think?
So I think the idea is the businesses could still provide, self-service containers. You can still grab them if you need them. But it's more, for example, DoorDash adds items on their menu that says, check here if you need utensils. If you're in the drive-through, they would ask you, do you need a straw? Do you need cutlery? So that's the change, is more on the business side. And we can do some education on that too. But they can certainly still provide them.
Right. Well, I'm real big on the straws because I don't use straws anymore. And whenever I go in a restaurant, they put straws in there, and I didn't want a straw, and quit giving me all these straws, you know? But anyway, anybody got any objections to moving this forward? I guess might be the way to put it.
Yeah, I'm not objecting, Mayor Tecklenburg. I just, I think this is a great step because it actually cuts down on the use completely. So
Right.
I do think it's a good first step.
Right.
I guess I need to do a little more research on this. I guess I don't understand how Walmart can say, bring back your bags and we can recycle them for you. Do they have different equipment? I mean, what's different about why can Walmart recycle these thicker bags and say, they're totally recyclable? And then we have other groups that say, no, they're not recyclable. And, is it a matter of us needing to upgrade our equipment so we can recycle material? I mean, that kind of is what sticks in my mind, I guess.
It's a great question, and it has to do with what different facilities accept different materials to be recycled. And it does depend on their equipment available and the system and the program that they've created. So there are a lot of companies that will say this product I created is recyclable. But if the recycling program doesn't take it, now it's not recyclable, right? So if there's no program that will take it, then it's just disposed of in the trash. So that's a disconnect. So the plastic bags, there are some grocery stores that will accept them back. They have a way of recycling them. They have a whole different separate system for doing that. It's just not accepted at Charleston County.
It's not accepted at any material recovery facility that uses all those gears and equipment to move the heavier pieces of recycling through the system. So, someone is not just going to put a bag in the recycle bin. They're going to put the bag full of stuff. You've got all that stuff in the bag. So whatever's in that bag is, whether it's recyclable or not, it's not going to get recycled because it's a contaminant at that point because it's in the bag. And like Katie said, at the grocery store, they're working with totally different markets than the MRFs are. They're working with a totally different system. They have balers in the back room that they're going to bale cardboard. And then once they finish baling the cardboard, they're going to bale the plastic bags and they're going to do a back haul. So the truck that comes in with the food is then going to go out with those bales. And that goes back to their distribution center. So it's a totally different system for recycling.
Gotcha. All right. Well, that makes sense. It's complicated, but it makes sense. Well, I love talking trash, but let's move on if we could to the electric vehicles and infrastructure. That's a very important topic. I think if it's all right with y'all, ask Katie. I know you mentioned that we get this going first and maybe the other jurisdictions will kind of follow. Let's take another month on this and see if we can get a couple of those other jurisdictions on board with us at the same time and bring this back. Does that sound reasonable to y'all? All right, terrific. So I see Danny Cass's, or I did a minute ago, but we have Westy Westmoreland, I think, with Dominion Energy next up to talk about electric vehicles and infrastructure. It's a hot topic. There's some federal funding out there available to help us down the road. So let's figure this thing out. Danny, you want to start or give us over to Westy?
Yeah, I'm going to turn you over to Westy. So he should be on, and so I'm going to let him roll through the slide deck, Mayor.
Okay, great. And Tammy is with us as well today. We got a big Dominion presence. Thank y'all for being with us. Westy?
Hey, glad to be with you. Thank you, Mayor. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. So, Katie, I cannot log on from the computer for the link I was only able to log on through my phone. Do you have the slides available that you could put up for the group?
Yes, I can share them.
Okay, great. That would be awesome. Okay, great. I can see it.
There you are.
Yep, there I am. So just real quick, Westy Westmoreland, been with Dominion, SCE&G, 31 years. So just recently, as of April 1st, Danny and I have moved over to our new business and customer solutions. I work in that department now under Danny as Director of Electrification. You can go to the next slide. So just real quick, where we are as the EV passenger market worldwide, huge increase of the amount of adoption from electric vehicle space in the U.S., but especially in China and Western Europe. You kind of see the fourth quarter spike. The S curve has started to form, and we essentially had an inflection point early 2021. So even in the first quarter of 22, we're seeing large industrialized zones like Europe and China exceeding 20% of new vehicle sales being electric. We increased in the U.S. from about 2% to 4%. So we're seeing a doubling of the adoption rate. Still a lot more market to go to clean energy electric vehicles, but just a rapid growth rate right now. Next slide. So this is the EVs in South Carolina. Just got the year-end 2021 data. We're growing at about a 52% annual growth rate right now. We're nearing 10,000 vehicles statewide. Dominion's area, we have about 36% of that. So we're around 3,500, 3,600 passenger vehicles, state of South Carolina. So I'm continuing to see strong growth. We were about 44% at the middle of last year to the end of last year. We've upped it to 52%, and I think that's going to go even higher. Next slide, please, Katie. So this is a pretty cool heat map, South Carolina, year-end 2000, so about 18 months ago. If it's white zip code, that means there's no EV registered in that zip code. If it's colored, that means that it has EV registered, and the darker the color is the higher the density. So you can see Charleston is probably the highest density per zip code of electric vehicles in the state of South Carolina. If it's not the highest, them in Greenville and then the areas right around Charlotte are neck and neck. But I think the Charleston Tri-County area and the zip codes are probably the highest density right now in the state. So that's year-end 2020. Go to the next slide, please. So this is year-end 2021. So 12 months later, about 4 months ago, you can see that there's a lot less zip codes that have no EVs registered in the state. And you can see that the density in the urban areas and the coastal regions are getting significantly higher penetration density of electric vehicles in those zip codes. Next slide, please, Katie. So this is a really, really interesting, really good slide to see what your energy cost benefit is on a passenger vehicle. So it could be your vehicle, could be a passenger vehicle in your city fleet. But if you look at like the vehicle I drive, I charge at home at about 12 cents a kilowatt hour. I get about 4 miles per kilowatt hour. So my cost is around 3 cents a mile charging at home. That's my fuel cost. If my previous car was about 30 miles a gallon, and if I was paying $3.50, which is probably kind of low, I'm probably actually low at this point, I would be paying 14 cents a mile just for the fuel cost. So it's almost an 80% savings. And if you look at the rates the city would pay, it would be even higher because your rates are lower than the standard residential rates. Maintenance costs. We've looked at a lot of transit buses. Cat Bus in Clemson was one of the forerunners. CARTA's doing a lot of transit electric buses. As a matter of fact, we're out there now putting in large backbone infrastructure for the 33 buses they have on site, 13 that are in operations now. And general rule of thumb, after some history with the buses, is about 50% maintenance savings, because there's no fluids, there's no oils to change, no filters to change. The brakes last twice as long or more because you have regenerative braking with the electric buses or electric vehicles, so significant maintenance savings. From an environmental standpoint, Katie and I talked about this a lot in our resiliency committee, is zero tailpipe emissions. So, you know, when you're idling that you have to in some situations, then you're not emitting there. So you have a really higher air quality situation when you have an electric vehicle. Carbon reduction is significantly lower through the life cycle of the vehicle. And one thing from a cost standpoint is the generation mix on electric is you have multiple sources, whether it's solar, hydro, wind, nuclear, gas, coal. So you're able to stabilize your costs, so you don't see wild swings in energy costs like you do with fuels like oil and diesel, or gasoline and diesel. Next slide, please. So this is kind of getting into the crux of what Katie wanted me to go over, just kind of a basis of what the charging options are. So there's essentially 3 levels of charging, 1, 2, and 3. Level 3 is also known as direct current fast charging, or DC fast charge. So level 1 would be your standard plug, 120 volt plug. You can charge your vehicle with that, so you always have that option. Your charging speed is very low, so it's not used in most applications these days, because you've only get about 5 miles of range per charge. So most people at home use a 240 volt plug, a dryer type plug, same one that would run your cooking unit as well. So you can plug your charger that comes with the car into that plug, or you can put in a home charger, a dedicated circuit. So that's a 240 volt circuit. I put in a charger in my house on a 240 volt circuit. It's about 60 amps. It operates at about 48 amps, and I get around 45 miles per hour of charge on that level 2. So, you know, I typically will come back with 60 miles of range depleted, and so within a couple of hours, I'm back to a full 300 miles of range. So very convenient to plug in at night, charge, and be full for the next day. So just to recap, difference between level 1 is just your standard 120 plug. Level 2 is either a 240 volt dryer plug or a 240 volt circuit. It could be a 208 circuit as well in an application, but it is single phase AC. Level 3 would be what you would see for on the highways, your Tesla superchargers. What the CARTA will have for their fleet are DC fast charging. They're going to be able to charge at CARTA at up to 125 kilowatts per bus per charger. So you're able to get a lot faster charge than you would be on a level 2. So level 2 is approximately 7 to 10 kW. Level 3 would go up to 350 kW. So you can see the difference in the speed. It can be up to 30 times faster charging speed it does require 3-phase 480 volt service, and in order to get those charging speeds. So I know that was one important question to you, Katie. Does anybody have any questions related to the different chargers and the charging option? That might be something that raises some questions. Okay. Or if you would, okay, this is just some pictures of the different chargers. The one on the left is a level 2 workplace charger that we have in our office. You can see there's kind of 2 handles there, 2 ports, so you can charge 2 vehicles simultaneously with that charger at about 30 amps each. So you get about 30 miles of range per hour of charge. So you come to the office, you plug in, or you bring your company vehicle in overnight, you'd be able to get about 30 miles of range on that charger. Next slide, please. So one thing Katie wanted me to cover was network versus non-network chargers. So we kind of refer to them a lot of times as dumb chargers versus smart chargers. So you can get a charger that has no communications, no two-way, no Wi-Fi, and essentially it's programmed from the factory, and you would plug it into your vehicle and it would charge at a certain speed. So that would be your non-network charger. So not a lot of circuitry and componentry. Like the one we had in our office, and most chargers in the public space are going to be networked. The reason that network chargers are really valuable is that you'd be able to get information from them. If they're not working, they'll notify you that they're not working, so you can respond and repair the charger. You can set pricing. So if you want to charge 20 cents a kilowatt hour or 30 cents a kilowatt hour, you want to charge by the hour, or you don't want to charge at all, you can program that, and you can change that as needed. You can also charge different rates, whether it's on peak, off peak, incentivize customers to charge off peak with a lower price signal for that. So really, network chargers is the majority of what we work with and what we're planning to work with. But you can use a non-network charger. Mine at the house is a non-network charger, and the reason it works fine for me is that I can do all the programming in the car. I can set charging times, charging speeds, all that with the vehicle. I don't need my charger at the home to necessarily be smart. If anybody has any questions on that, feel free to kind of jump in. If you do, on the network versus non-network. This is a slide I put together. Just basically, when you buy the car, you will get a 120 volt plug, or you'll get a 240 volt plug. So you don't have to have a built-in charger at your house or business. You can charge from the car itself, or if you're traveling, you got an Airbnb or whatever, you can, if you have access to a 240 volt plug, then you can just plug right in, or even a 120. So that top piece on that picture on the bottom left is removable, so you can plug in a 120 volt plug or a 240 volt plug to the same charger. These are the most common 240 volt plugs. You have your NEMA 1430, which is your dryer plug, and your NEMA 1450, which is your oven plug. So at your house and you kind of look at the plug, that's probably what you're looking at, is a NEMA 1430 or 1450. Next slide, please. So these are your DC charging basics. So you have the non-Tesla standard, which is called a CCS1. So this would be any Chevy Bolt or any cars generally that are not Teslas would be the CCS plug connection. So you would use that plug when you would DC fast charge. And then if you have a Tesla, you have the one on the right, which is does the same thing. It's just a different plug configuration. So if you look at the CCS plug, it kind of has two pieces. You see the round piece at the top, and then kind of the oval at the bottom. If you're only using the AC, the 240 volt single phase, like that at your house or your workplace, you're not going to use those bottom two ports. Those are only for fast charging. You would just use the upper part, which is the circular piece. So a couple of differences between them. EV Readiness Ordinance is another thing Katie wanted to mention. A number of cities have passed ordinances that require home builders or commercial businesses to be EV ready, which means they have a 240 volt circuit in the garage, because most houses now are not built with 240 volt plugs in the garage unless there's a dryer in the garage. So it's a minimal cost when you build a house. It's 5 times more expensive to add it later on. So probably $200 to $300 when you build the house, and up to $1,500 to add that circuit later on. So yeah, a big incentive to have that to start with. And somewhat similar with a multifamily or commercial application, to be EV ready is to have that separate circuit, that separate 240 or 208 circuit that would be able to provide for an EV charger during construction versus having to add it later. So, one thing that we're looking at providing is EV charging as a service. So we'd be able to come off of our system separately metered and provide you a charging station like is in these pictures now at a city office or workplace that would be able to serve that need, which could be easier than coming out of your house panel. So it would be just an option for customers, whether they want to do it themselves behind their house meter or whether they want a separate meter from the utility and a charger, just to provide it that we would operate and maintain. Next slide, please. So these are just a few pictures of a lot of police vehicles going to electric, no emissions, of course, healthier air quality, less carbon intensity, performance, nothing faster on the road than an electric vehicle. Nobody's going to outrun you. We've also got refuse trucks. New York City's got refuse trucks. I know the city has looked at some potential grants for electric garbage vehicles. Also, the first electric fire truck went into service last week in Los Angeles. Fully functional electric fire truck. Next slide, one more. So these are some of the off-road vehicles we're working on. We're actually going to be doing our first Aviation Charger in Charleston Airport. We're going to have a fully electric plane that's going to travel. They're doing every 200 miles. That's going to travel up and down from Vermont down the East Coast. They've got contracts with UPS for package deliveries. And so they'll be able to fly from airport to airport, fully electric, battery operated, and charge at about 500 kV, 500 kVA free phase power at the airport, at the private terminal in order to charge that plane. So we've done some hybrid ferry boats in Charleston, working on some potential grants with the Ports Authority on tugboats that would be able to move traffic across the rivers to reduce truck traffic on our roads and do it emission free with tugboats. Also, some discussion electric locomotives, and there's a huge market for off-road or for forklifts. A lot of businesses switching to zero emission all electric forklifts with the same lifting capacity as propane or diesel. Next slide, please. I think that's it. Yeah, I hope that wasn't too fast and furious.
Any Rick, questions for Westy?
Yes, sir. I think I'm audible now. Can we get a copy of that slide deck? That was the most informative summary of EV vehicles that I've ever seen in my life, and it just answered so many of my questions. It's such a great, simple presentation that I love it. So if you can make that available to us on a PDF or something, that would be fantastic.
I post the slides after every meeting on our Resilience Committee webpage, so I will send that to you, Rick.
Great. Any other questions or comments? So I guess the big question is, how do we get from where we are now, which is next to nothing, to where we need to be to satisfy a demand that's going to be growing, I think, exponentially over the next 10 years. And I'm still curious how the petroleum distribution business is going to play a part in this, if they are or not, because folks still need to get around. They're still going to want to buy, soft drinks and chicken, and they could charge up at commercial stations just like they buy gasoline. And but in the meantime, the Biden administration has a lot of competitive grants that we can apply for to try to put charging stations in public spaces and help facilitate this transition. I know Katie's been looking into some of those grant opportunities, and but they're out there, and can I solicit any comments or suggestions from anyone on path forward? Catherine, are y'all looking at this at the COG level, could I ask?
Yeah, actually, I was just going to say that we've been kind of getting involved with a larger group of a lot of people looking at vehicle electrification, one on the economic development side, but also just on what it will take in terms of the grid support of that and looking at where some of those grants can be applied. So, Katie, I'll forward you that. If you're not on that group, I'm going to forward you that group because you could I think they're meeting like weekly to talk about the different grants, and not just for this, but this is one of the main ones that we're looking at. So
That's good. Stuart?
I'm just wondering if the city could take a really bold step and possibly say that, I'm going to be radical for a minute, no building permits will be issued unless you're building, especially a commercial building, unless you're making sure that there is EV charging with that building.
The EV Readiness Ordinance. And we have other cities, Katie, that have you looked into whether there's some model ordinances out there that have already been in place?
There are a bunch and a bunch in the Southeast. I think it would be a welcome addition to our zoning code. I see it could just be part of, as we, revisit the entire zoning code, I would imagine it would just be part of that process unless we wanted to speed things up and try to get something passed sooner.
All right. Let's take a serious look at that. I think we should. Council members, any comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Well, it seems to me, Mayor, the path that'll get us there the quickest is probably visiting this as we rethink the downtown plan, which I think will be the first thing that comes up with zoning on a large scale in the near future. So that's probably a good place to start.
All right.
I think we're going to call it the Peninsula Plan, actually.
Okay.
Danny and Westy, this is going to put Dominion. Y'all ready to take Exxon's place out there in the marketplace? Y'all got that much electricity?
Yes, sir, we sure do, but we would really love for y'all to use it. I love for it to be used off peak to start with.
Yeah. So, and it's amazing to me how many, when you go to the grocery store, I do not have an electric vehicle yet. My next one will be, but folks can go to the grocery store at Whole Foods and just sign up. That's free, isn't it? They charge you up for free when you're shopping?
Yes, sir, that's correct. I've used it before. It's the same chargers that we have at our offices as well. And so you go up and you swipe your app on your phone and unplug, plug in, and you get free charging while you shop.
Yeah. So, I can't imagine that's going to last forever once the market, really takes off on this. So that's,
yes, sir.
That's something to consider. And like I said, I'm really curious to see how the petroleum distribution business takes a part in all this. But we got some real need for electricians and installers, and that's a whole trade that I think from workforce development. I don't know if Trident Tech or somebody is already focusing on that, or some new businesses. It seems like a great opportunity for a new business just to focus on EV installations. Do you think?
Yes. So Trident Tech, Bosch in North Charleston is making the motors for all the Rivian electric trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Mercedes is going to make the first all-electric Sprinter van starting next year. So they're both engaged with Trident Tech on technical training programs, in order to bring qualified folks into their factories to make these vehicles. So then, of course, Volvo as well. It's going to be all electric by 2025. As far as every vehicle will either be battery electric or hybrid within, I guess, 3 years. So also some tie-ins there as well. So a lot of local benefit to the entire electric vehicle market in Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Mayor, if I might just jump in really quickly, Westy and Danny, as you all are well aware, one of the indicators that we're well familiar with on how quickly this market is going is CARTA, by the end of this year, will have 40 battery electric buses, which is a third of our fleet. And 2 years ago, we had 0. So one of the challenges, by the way, has been not the buses themselves, but the charging equipment has been hard to get through the supply chain. We actually can't put the buses out for as many hours as we'd like right now because we're a little behind on that charging equipment, but we'll catch back up with that. And it's a huge investment. And I just think it's a good indication that this community at every level of mobility and transit is looking at different ways to fuel it other than to go to the pump and stick a bunch of gas in it. So it's been very successful for us. And I think we'll really see a lot more of it in the future. I suspect 3 or 4 years from now, we'll be close to 100% battery electric.
May I ask Mike a question? Mike, are you going to put those charging stations for the buses? Are you going to distribute them throughout the community?
So that's a very good question, and we're looking at that. We've been working with Dominion on that. It's more expensive to have mobile charging than it is to have stationary charging. So currently we charge at our station, but we are going to try to put some mobile charging for our buses anyway out on the street so they can continuously operate without having to come back to home base.
And maybe people in the community could use them when the buses aren't being charged.
That would be a question probably for Westy and for Danny. I don't know enough about the actual equipment and the different levels that Westy was talking about, what compatibility they have, but certainly if there's compatibility, we'd be interested in that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Westy, what's an average cost to put in one of those type 2 charging units like they have at Whole Foods out in the parking lot?
So the unit themselves is for a dual port, so it'd serve 2 vehicles. Probably just in the box cost $7,000-8,000, and then you'd have infrastructure. So just depends on the cost to get the infrastructure to the location that you would want. But yeah, I would say dual port, $12,000, something like that. It's probably a good price. You could do it plus or minus from there.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, Danny and Westy, do y'all envision Dominion having retail sales with chargers at various locations where you would sell energy kind of on a retail basis like that?
Yes. One thing we're seeing from our customers is there's a lot of interest for us to provide charging for them at the retail level. So one of the issues with charging early on is the equipment was placed out into the field and it was not properly maintained. So people would come to charge and it doesn't work properly. So instead of having to do all that support yourself and then having to create a new thing in your business of owning and operating and maintaining a charger, they're looking to us to provide that service for them to make sure those chargers are fully operational, just like very similar to we provide the lighting system or the electric system. The people that have chargers, they want to make sure that they work and that they provide that service to the customer. So it could be at the retail level as far as a straight cost for the energy, or the other model is that they would just pay like they do with lighting a fee to have that service on site, and then just pay the energy that through the meter that the charger uses, and then any revenue that they can gain from the charger from the driver, then that would be credited back to them to offset their cost. So we're looking at just selling the energy to them and providing the equipment and the service to them to meet their needs, just because there is a significant need for our customers, especially multifamily dwellings and workplace. Multifamilies, if you live in an apartment complex and you have no ability to charge, then you can't buy an EV. So that's a market that we really want to put chargers in place so that people can own EVs that live in condos and apartment complexes.
Right. Well, the time has run past noon already. This was a fascinating topic and so timely, and it's going to evolve over the next year or two, like maybe we don't even foresee at this point. Could I ask that Katie and at least one person from Dominion, and then whoever else feels a real passion about this, to let us form a little subcommittee, and y'all come back to us next meeting with some specific recommendations in terms of our EV Readiness Ordinance for the city, and just really thinking about some solid recommendations. And maybe Catherine, if you don't mind volunteering to serve on that, or if I could ask you to do that, since the COG is researching some of this, maybe get 4 or 5 of us kind of working on this independently, because there's a lot coming down the pike on this, isn't there? Is that appropriate? Anybody want to agree to volunteer? Just let me or Katie know. And I know Stuart's always ready, but Christine, but
Right.
yeah.
It might be myself or someone else from.
Yeah.
But I think, both being governments, I think we might be able to work together potentially.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Westy, are you local? Do you live in Charleston, or?
Yes, Mayor. I live in Mount Pleasant.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I've lived in
Yeah.
Charleston all my life.
Oh, terrific. Yeah. If you'd help us, or Danny wants to do it directly, it's fine. But if one of y'all would be on that, that would be great. So we can really get some solid recommendations and some action steps going forward in the near future. That'd be great. All right.
Yeah,
We can do that.
we both
Mayor,
would
I
like
think
to
there
do
are
that.
a couple people who would like to speak for the public comment. I know some of them may have already had to leave.
Oh, okay. Anybody from the public want to speak? You want to set
You
them
can
up?
also write notes in the chat. Betsy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Tecklenburg. Can you all hear me all right?
Hey, Betsy, we can hear you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks. I know we're running past time. I'll keep it brief. I just wanted to chime in and express our enthusiasm and gratitude for everybody's receptivity and support of this composting program. This is such a joy to work on and has been a long time coming for us in Charleston. And as Katie mentioned, and Stuart can testify, hearing people's testimonials at the farmers market, colleagues, neighbors have been excited to come up to me and share how much they love the program. I think this is the first project I've worked on in my 5 years at the League that is 100% non-controversial. Everybody loves it. It's not political. It's a win-win. So super excited to hear y'all's support about requesting the funding from City Council to make this a permanent program and expand access for the community as we continue to think of ideas to enhance the program moving forward. So thank you all so much, and looking forward to continuing to work on this.
Great. Thank you, Betsy. Appreciate your help with it all, too.
Okay, Emily,
pleasure.
you're next.
Emily?
Hi there. Thank you all. This is Emily Sedzo. I also have the fortune of working with Betsy over at the Conservation League. And I'll also keep it brief. I just wanted to express to you all our overwhelming support for pursuing these amendments to the plastics ordinance. This is something I had the pleasure of working on with Katie and many of you on this very committee years ago. And, there was a lot of support from local businesses and citizens. And I think once things were passed and implemented, seeing those larger box stores switch to the thicker plastic bags was really discouraging for our local businesses who took it upon themselves to keep within the integrity of the ordinance and pursue those alternative products and provide reusable bags for folks. So I just want to say, we are here still years later, happy to support you all. We'll also be communicating about these changes and working with citizens and businesses to make sure folks are well aware of the change should it be passed by council. And I just also want to say, regarding Christine's comments on the ideal to switch to compostable materials, we absolutely support that. And we understand it's a longer process and will take some time, but it's something we're also very much interested in addition to the potential to require local businesses to provide recycling receptacles, really basic steps the city can take, I think, that we would be more than happy to work with you all in pursuing. And then finally, I just want to say, such a kudos to Katie and the rest of the folks at the city who have made it really easy to work with local businesses and educating them on these changes and on the ordinance. And even during COVID with enforcement questions and challenges, they have been really, really good to businesses and good to the public. So just huge shout out to the city for handling this so well and really being a leader on this in the local community. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Emily. Did we have anybody else, Katie?
Belvin. Go ahead, Belvin.
Hey, can y'all hear me?
Yes, Belvin.
Hey, Belvin Olsop, the Charleston Climate Coalition here. I just want to briefly say how encouraging it is to see the compost program moving forward in such a successful way. All the climate activists and advocates I work with are deeply encouraged by it. And it's a really big ticket item, honestly, when you look at climate action. There's a whole lot of methane that comes from food waste being put in the landfill. And methane is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. So this is something that I love seeing the city move forward on. And I look forward to seeing it progress. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And I think that's all we have for public comment. Folks could also throw things in the chat. I know Dale had a couple updates if there's more time, or we can push that to our next meeting. It's up to you, Mayor.
Dale, anything hot you want to share?
No, Mayor, there are just a number of things we have underway. What I guess the two most important things, and I can update everyone at the next meeting, it's fine. I'm now going to post a link in the chat for an executive order that President Biden issued a few weeks ago. It's very encouraging. It's regarding nature-based features and the federal initiatives and science and improvements to the economics of that's there. So that's in the link. I encourage everyone to look at it. It made me excited. And you all may know that the State Office of Resilience is developing a state resilience plan that should be out. It's likely to be postponed until next July because they want to do some better, more detailed work. So that is good, but you can go to their website and see what they're doing. I encourage you to do that. It's an awesome plan under development. And just a shout out, the Historic Charleston Foundation will host Ben Duncan, the state CRO, to present a little meeting on this or overview of the state resilience plan sometime in late June. That'll be a webinar open to the public. Just have to register for it. So have a look at that. And that's what I have for now. And I'll postpone the rest till next time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dale. Thank you all again for being with us. Sorry we ran a little over, but all good stuff. And look forward to some specific recommendations on the EV stuff next time. And we'll go back and on the plastic and the plastic bag ordinance next time after we see if we can get a couple other jurisdictions in with us. So unless there's any further comments or questions for the good of the order, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.